Alright, your electric motor division, SD45 locomotive surface panel, section 2, lubricating oil system, and we're going to zoom out to 100%. Pictorial of the diagram, lubricating oil system shown figure 2-1, the oil under the pressure for the engine, lubrication piston cooling, and the positive of the displacement, the combination piston cooling, lubricating oil pump, after the circulation through the engine, lubricating oil drain into the oil pump, the positive displacement, scavenging oil pump with the draws the oil from the sump strain of the housing and then forces it through the oil filter cooler, through the cooler with the oil delivered to another compartment, and the oil strainer assembly where it is available for the recirculation with the combination of the piston and lubricating oil pump. The lubricating oil pump is mounted with the front end of the engine, the air gear with the driven the engine through the accessory drive gear train, the oil straining however they also mounted with the front of the engine and the oil cooler filter assembly located in the equipment rack adjacent to the front of the engine along hooded end of the locomotive. Turbocharger lubricating oil system is obtained with the engine lubrication system, separate automatic started motor driven with the turbocharger auxiliary lube oil pump is used with the supply with the turbocharger prior to the starting of the engine. Whenever the engine shut down, the motor is timed to operate approximately 35 minutes after each of the time to start for the oil circulation through the turbocharger is necessary to prior to the start of the engine during the period of the engine oil pressure of the building to provide the proper lubrication after the engine shut down. The continued oil circulation is necessary to remove the residual heat from the turbo with the return of the hot oil with the oil pump pan sump for the auxiliary pump due to the work with the extending with the main battery switch for the turbocharger auxiliary pump circuit with the breaker that must be closed. See figure 2.2. Turbocharger auxiliary loop oil pump with the draw for the oil pan oil and sump with the discharge with the pump that's filtered with the into the head assembly with the main turbocharger oil filter head assembly contains check valves required with the proper loop oil filled with the oil with the filter head assembly if within the directive of the turbocharger auxiliary lube pump circuit with the following text in conjunction with the figure 2 to explain with the function of the turbo lube pump circuit with the main battery switch of the move with the open to the closed position battery pump battery power with the flow of the turbo pump circuit with the breaker with through the normally closed with the contacts no voltage relay or NVR with the no voltage relay. Relay contacts remain closed until the engine is running. Also, this show of the top show of the this is a lubricating oil system electrical and schematic diagram. The schematic diagram starts with the lube oil cooler going down through the to the main piston cooling oil pump system, and then going through and to the oil sump overflow to the oil sump and to the main cooling oil pumps. For the main cooling oil pumps, go the engine governor load regulator vane. Also going back and forth between the oil pressure sensing line. The oil sump goes up to the scavenger pump strainer, but also for the main pump piston cooling oil pumps to the scavenging oil, back to the lube oil filters through the engine accessory housing, crank brace, low water detector, and vent. Figure 2-1 for lubricating oil system pictorial diagram. Show the oil filter, oil stranger, scavenging oil, two turbocharged lube oil pump with the oil crankshaft with the bearings, oil pump sump with the turbo auxiliary lube oil filter, piston cooling oil line, turbocharger crankshaft oil pump passage, low oil pressure shutdown, engine oil pressure gauge, piston cooling lubricating oil pump. And the D14 alternator during living, they alternate current and no voltage relay contact clove between the AC power with the D14 alternator and get engine shut down with the power of the no voltage relay contact with the flow through the closed contact with the fuel prime engine start button switch to the normally closed push button contacts engine drive with the turbo line delay turbo line time delay relay or TLTD. The relay begins at the time normally closed down contact with the turbo lube time delay will remain with the close of the position period set with the timing device normally 35 minutes. Current flow through the close time delay will pick up with the contact with the turbo lube time delay to energize the turbo lube power contactor or the TLPC. Contacts the turbo lube pump contactor seal with a relay with against the no voltage relay. Pick up the engine of the turbo lube pump with the light with the serve of the engine turbo lube pump motor. Set up the circuit with the short contact with the fuel pump the engine priming the engine start switch for time relay will continue with the time so along with the current flow of the relay coil. When the relay time does times out the turbo lube time delay contacts identified with the figure 2 the upward pointing arrows pick up the turbo lube power contactor energize the turbo lube or power contactor drops open the turbo lube pump motor. Stop the turbo auxiliary pump light goes on out with the engine running at the time of the relay time out with the no voltage relay contacts are open the time loop time delay and it's de-energized drop out with the no voltage relay pressure for the engine stop push button or movement of the fuel prime with the engine start switch with the re-establish the time cycle. Section 2 turbo lube pumping operation of the engine with the running with the turbo lube time delay. The times of the no voltage relay contacts begin with the time holding the time lube time delay energize with the time lube power contactor Pickup contactor drops out of the time loop time delay. Pickup the timing cycle of the tube loop turbo loop pump operation can be reestablished by operation fuel pump engine starting switch pressure engine stop pushing button. During certain electrical testing procedure, no voltage relay may be latched closed at either range with the latching mechanism built within the relay or insertion. Alright, figure 2-2 show the turbocharger auxiliary loop oil filter, separate in 5 different parallel circuits. From the battery, you have the turbo pump motor circuit with a top tube loop power contactor push button. Your R resistor and turbo auxiliary pump light. On the next parallel circuit, you have the tube lube, turbocharger lube, turbo lube power contactor with the motor turbo lube pump, turbo lube power contactor, and no voltage relay, and turbo lube delay 35-minute delay pickup open drain pipe start fuel engine pump, 2 resisting currents, power contactor time delay, no voltage relay, 2 lube power contactor push buttons, insulation switch, fuel priming engine start switch, and close during switch and starting contactor. Or something something like a folded matchbook with the whole of the relay contacts closed with the locomotive return surface and no voltage relay latch for the engine running with no voltage relay contact for the power of the tube lube pump circuit that cannot be dropped with the clove with the steer of the turbo charges drain. Loop oil the level of the gauge dipstick and an oil level of the gauge in figure 2-3 extend with the side of the pan of the oil pump stand. Some of the oil level should be maintained between low and fuel marks for the engine gauge with the reading of when the engine inside idle speed the oil is hot. 2-3 oil level of the gauge in dipstick. Note under the sum of the condition oil level may be above the bottom of the oil of the pan hold, and so the care must be taken with the oil pan handhold is covered. Lubrication oil sampling and analysis. Lubrication oil sample should be taken with the analysis interval stipulated. Scheduled maintenance program. The sample should be submitted with the competent laboratory to manufacture stability of the oil from the continued use. Without obtaining the sample with the following manner to run the engine long enough to ensure the through circulation. Shut the engine down, remove the starting of the fuse, obtain the sample of the normal 1 pint with the center of the oil pan halfway between the surface of the bottom of the pan. Note the inconsistent sample technique to produce inconsistent results. Oil coolers inspection maintenance. The major surface of the oil cooler should not be undertaken with the need for the maintenance of the defined established for the inside of fixture operation. Suspected oil cooler leaks wide temperature. The differential between the cooling water engine oil. Deflection of the leak. There may be no simple method of detecting the water leak for the oil side of the lubrication with the oil cooler assembly. However, the evidence of the water contamination will show that the routine engine of the oil sample is taken, analyzed, prescribed with the scheduled maintenance program, and such the evidence for the close of the examination for the cooler maintenance instruction for the cleaning of the repair lubrication oil cooler. Listen and serve the data page. Detection of the dirty oil cooler core. Proper lubrication oil temperatures are dependent on the maximum lube oil cooler performance in order to obtain the valid indication of oil cool performance of locomotive that must be operated with the full rated load engine speed while the oil and water temperatures are always stabilized. Procedure: remove the 1/4 inch pipe plug with located with the water pump discharge elbow with place insert the thermometer well the shown figure 2.4 with the fill with the water with the oil with the water temperature into the engine will take an point with the set up of the engine with the loaded apparatus with the capable of taking the full rated load with the locomotive refer to loading testing section manual with the instruction covering the loading testing setup with caution. Most of the standard load boxes are not sufficient capacity for the fully loaded locomotive. 3. The move of the square cover from the engine motor with the oil stream of the hang cage thermometer in the thermometer in the overflow of the compartment of the strainer housing. Figure 2-3. The oil over the cooler may be certain that the thermometer the bubble was below the surface of the oil with the capsule submerged with the reading of the take of the insert of the thermometer into the well with located with the engine water inlet. 5. Operate the engine apply with load. Do not operate above the throttle position. Number 3. Until the water temperature is above the 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Operate the full load with the full engine speed until the engine water inlet with the temperature stabilized that may be necessary to engine drive the block. Open the engine cooling fans to maintain the constant water temperature in the range for the 160-175 degrees. For the cooling system schematic diagram in section 3. They note the equal readings will be taken within 15 minutes and will indicate a stable operation compatibility. 2-4. Location thermometer to determine the oil and water temperature differential thermometer oil level of water in and the 1.5 inch NPT surface data part number. Alright, you have your outlets, bypass valve, inlet, drain valve, cover, hinge with the cover, and these are your filter housing cradle with the pleated cotton paper element, the 7-element lubricating oil filter assembly. Record temperature reading with the compared with the performance baseline given the surface tab with the page with the oil temperature given the water temperature reading with a higher than the limited included indicating with the line of the oil cooler should be reserved in the corner for the maintenance instruction list in the surface data page. Oil filter inspection maintenance figure 2.5. The oil filter element should be replaced with the new elements intervals stipulate with the scheduled maintenance program, you will only approve of the elements combination included with the server data page. Procedure: to operate with the diesel engine until the oil is warm, circulate freely with the top of the engine, remove the starting with the view, remove the square cap of the engine, mount on loop oil stirring housing, figure 2.6 with the raised latch of the gate valve with the handle with the engine starting valve with the drain with the oil with the filter housing into the oil sump, but it's not necessary to move the bail handle with the drain with the oil strainer housing. Note that depending upon the temperature of the oil with the system and the time of the drain valve is open, the adequate drain with the lubricating oil can take with 1/2 hour over the hot oil with the hot system and several hours of the cooling system, and if the system is fully charged, the time the system is to be drained. Figure the oil levels will rise above the bottom of the oil pan inspection cover. The 6.2 figure 2.6 for the adding oil to the engine with the straining housing. Fill drain valve only with the drain engine and filter housing. Drain valve open only of the drain engine oil. 4. After enough time, the elapsed allow the adequate drain with the easy handling with the filter slightly loose with the nuts and filter housing cover the oil. The remaining of the bottom of the housing will leak with the drain pan from this pipe in the engine room with the drainage pump sump. Provide an adequate quantity of the bound engine towel with the place of the container with the eve of the filter element with a convenient location. 7. After the oil has stopped during the under of the filter housing with the cover loosening the retaining of the swing of the hinge bolt. Clear for the cover the swing of the covered bolt. Remove the quickly dispose of the eve of the filter element. Use only clean up down with the edge tool to clean out the interior of the filter housing. Clean up the drain pan and the surrounding area. It's 9. Insert for the set of 7 new filter elements consisting of the part number shown for the surface data page. Make the assume that the elements are fully sealed with the sand pipe. Note the approved pleated paper elements have the red casing with which the component of the complement of the 7 paper elements is used with the certain approved of the elements. Then, when the filter elements are properly inserted with the new gasket with the circular driven with the housing cover, the disc cover, the used gasket, 11 cover the cover of the guide hole with the filter cover, the mate, the dowel pull, and the filter housing must before the cover of the closed, swing the hung bolt into the plate to tighten them, hold on down nuts. At the intervals scheduled stipulate with the scheduled maintenance program, remove the inspect with the pressure with the leaf valve, the figure 2.7 with the procedure to detail with the articulated article entitled with the inspection of the bypass valve of the assembly. 14. Close the filter drain gate valve of the oil strainer. 15. Before starting with the engine, check with the oil level using dipstick oil level should be above. Figure 2.7, the filter bypass valve with the valve guide with the valve spring with the pop of the valve and the assembly retaining spring with the cover plate with the gasket. Okay, for the full mark with the dipstick with the engine, show it down with the starting of the engine, allow it to run the idle speed, check the oil level of the dipstick, and then add oil if necessary. See figure 2.6, replace with the light, tighten down with the square with the cover of the oil stream, and inspect the oil leak for the filter housing, tightening the hole down with the nuts is necessary to stop any leaks. Inspection of the bypass valve assembly. Bypass valve assembly figure 2.7 should be removed with the check periodically. Interval stipulate with the scheduled maintenance program whenever the improper filtration is suspected. However, the operation of the valve assembly cannot be effectively checked by the locomotive for the reason when the recommended qualified spare assemblies are available for exchange. The assembly and use of the bench shaft, the inspection may be performed in accordance with the appropriate maintenance with instruction listed in the data page. Procedure: after the oil has been drained for the filter of the housing, the filter is removed with the housing clean, remove the 4 hold down nuts for the bypass valve of the port with the remove of the valve with the assembly, discover the port cover the gasket, 3 lights and rings for the hole of the valve with the assembly, see with the position hold against the valve port cover the bypass valve with the spring pressure of the nuts during the removal of the assembly, to replace the bypass valve with the assembly which qualified space, see the assembly properly with the 3 light with the guided spring with the in place with the ply of the new port of cover. Gasket and put port over the cover of the tighten the cover to hold the detonate between 55 and 64 pounds of torque with the standard tightening procedure. If qualified spare is not available, the valve assembly should be nevertheless be removed from and nevertheless be removed with the filter housing clean for the 3 of sludge varnishing and washing, and the solvent in the assembly should be carefully inspected. But after cleaning the poppet stem and the valve with the body clean, guys warm. Thus pieces should be placed in the new piece with the part number the listed in the data page. Test the valve spring. If qualified spare is not available, the valve spring should be tested with compressing it at a specific height that requires more or less of the values shown with the service data page. The spring should be replaced with a new spring. Our service data lubrication oil system references the lubrication oil filter maintenance M1926. Lubrication coil cool maintenance 92.7 and lubricant oil qualified with the E for the 645 E3 engine MI 1752. Routine marks parts and equipment. Filter bleeded cotton paper elements 7 per housing approved. No approved the elements identify the red casing. Filter hour covered gasket bypass valve port gasket. Thermometer well 1/4 inch MPT miscellaneous bypass valve. No, it's recommended qualified spare bypass valve assemblies be kept available to scheduled maintenance replacement. Pop the valve with the guide valve spring specifications. When required with the compressor, the valve spring with an 831719035 with an eighth of an inch must be not less than 420 pounds more than 500 pounds. This using 40 psi spring with lubricant oil capacity, basic oil pan 294 gallons, increased capacity oil pan 466 gallons, used oil pan basic oil pan 92 gallons, increased capacity oil pan 234 gallons, oil level gauge, and applies to the SD45 November 1966 oil versus water temperatures. SD45 performance guideline. You have the oil temperature into the engine within 10 minute increments from 16 degrees to 240 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, the water temperature into the engine degrees and in 140 to 10 degrees, 150, 60, 170, 180, 190, slope. Alright, Locomotive Surface Manual, Section 3, Cooling Systems.